kind of look like I just robbed a bank with this hat. These are the calipers and pads that came off the RX-8, and we're gonna rebuild them and clean them up and maybe make them not this ugly blue color anymore. Alright, so we got the pistons out of all the brakes. Joke's on us to do the rear brakes. We actually had to mess with the parking brake hardware because it's all kind of integrated. So we had to use the parking brake hardware to pull the pistons out. And now we have the conundrum of, this is the rear brake, here's where the parking hardware used to be. Since we're not going to do a parking brake, that leaves us with a giant hole that we have to figure out what to do with. So we are leaning towards cutting this off, and then there's a hole that runs to the back of the piston, and we can tap that and then just put it as a plug, and then basically that turns it into something very similar to how the front calipers work. It's a new day, and we have the brakes disassembled. We are just gonna kind of clean these up, figure out what to do with them. Quick explanation as to why they're not just like getting painted and go back together. I had an idea, well, Nick thought it was a good idea too.
I did, I agreed.
That we should try yellow chromate in my garage. And while it's a great idea and we could do a ton of bolts and it'd be really sweet, it's kind of messy, kind of hazardous. Not the cheapest option for taking care of calipers and other things, but it would look really cool. So it's not off the table yet. But we also are discussing powder coating and what was the other thing?
Just high temp, great.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, calipers are on hold till they get stripped, cleaned up, painted and or chromated, and then those are gonna go together. But today, we are going to try and fix up the driver's side engine mount. So what we got is our passenger side's pretty much locked down with this modified one. And we're gonna take the engine off the stand, bolt the transmission up, and then this one's a little funky because we kind of had goofy spacers back here. So what I did is got some material and made spacers that we can weld in. So then we can kind of fit the spacers into the holes and then weld them in the appropriate spot once we determine thicknesses and that sort of thing. Let's start by saying all the stuff we said about the turbo earlier is no good because we're just gonna make it work. Does that seem?
Yeah, we're gonna make it work.
Yeah, so I probably will edit. I just walked into the welder. All right, so I had filmed this whole thing about how we weren't sure the turbo was gonna work, yada, yada, yada. But really, we're just gonna run with it. The only thing that doesn't really fit that well, like we'll have to trim this for this wastegate actuator or just move it, not a huge deal. But the exhaust is kind of the only thing that's really gonna be an issue. And we're pretty sure if we just kind of cut this away and plate it off, it'll be fine. Just modify a little bit of the trans tunnel, a little bit of the firewall. But while we're in there, we can make room up there for the cam position sensor to live. So really, I mean, just kind of reworking this area down in here will have some great benefits. So we're keeping the turbo and we're just gonna make it work. After about 6 months, I'm gonna say, I finally have an engine mount that is more or less going to be complete after tonight. I turned down these are steel spacers. So we made aluminum spacers when we first did this engine mount. And then we were like, oh, we'll just measure those, make some steel ones, no big deal. That didn't really work because I dropped the aluminum ones and then the stacks got mixed up. And so we just started over with that. And now there's new steel ones back there. We're gonna weld those into place so that the bolts can just travel through. And that'll be good to go there on all 3 of those. Then there's just left to cut the plate on this side and the other side, and engine mounts should be complete at that point.
Yeah.
Which is pretty exciting. So with that happening, then the transmission will be, well, it's attached to the engine right now, just hanging off in the distance of the super dirty car. And next up will be to work on the trans to diff brace and finish up that pile of brakes over there.